Hello, and thank you ever so much for dialing in to our next Plan Talk discussion. I'm really pleased this time that we've got somebody from the planning portal, Scott Allford, who surprisingly, I'm trying to remember how many years I've worked with you at different times, but I think it's probably about 10. So I'm really pleased to have you here and really pleased to hear what you've got to say and kind of tell us a lot more about where the planning portal is going in this space. Just before we go into it, just in case anyone hasn't seen one of these before, we've got a fairly standard format. The first 15 minutes is Scott will give you a presentation, and then the second 15 minutes is Q&A. If you've got any questions, really do submit them during the presentation, because I tend to find you lose them if you hang around. And also it gives me a chance to get them ready. So you submit them on the panel, which I think is that side of the screen at the moment. So without further ado, I'll turn my camera and microphone off and leave it to you, Scott, and speak to you in about 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Yes, I'm just dialing in today to give you an update on what we're thinking about on the planning portal, covering our services, how we can make the process of planning and building easier for all stakeholders that use our services. Just going to give you a little bit of history. We are the National Planning Application Service in England and Wales. We are a joint venture with MHCLG, and that came about when we were commercialised back in 2015, which surprisingly is over 5 years ago. In March 2015, that took place. We are a commercial company and we operate as a commercial company now, so there is no subsidy from government for the services that we provide, although they do sit on our governance board and meet regularly on a monthly basis. Joining TerraQuest was a good fit. They share the same values and behaviours as a company, which has made the transition a lot easier. But effectively, since that time, we now operate as a commercial company. We've put lots of investment into the planning portal to improving the service, moving off of our old infrastructure onto a new digital platform that's fully device compliant and mobile compatible. And again, delivering a new tech platform and also looking to create a viable business from that. Just looking at our core values and principles, throughout the time of the planning portal, since its very induction, we've taken a customer first approach to all of the services that we deliver. So we kind of mind map what it is the customer wants to do and try to recreate that and put that in a better digital format. A part of our success is all about building successful partnerships. So in the early days, we worked with local authorities in implementing electronic government. And that's involved a lot of key players in the process, from local authorities as service delivery partners right the way through to applicants and agents that use us on a regular basis. And one of the fundamental parts of that is we take great pride in providing a quality service to all of those customers and all the stakeholders that engage with it. How are we doing that? We started off whilst in government as being a one-stop shop to planning. Providing accurate and authoritative information on planning service, but the transactional service for submitting applications too. So we keep all of that up to date and legislatively compliant. Again, working in partnership with local authorities, it saves them having to do that on their websites. One of the good technical deliveries that we've done is the interactive house that is now still continues to be used to find out about permitted development. Again, one of our key principles is to look through the process to add value for all those stakeholders and simplify. And when thinking about delivering quality up front, what we're thinking about there again is content and guidance. How can we inform people of the thing that they will need to take into account when developing their house or their business? And again, trying to provide as practical approach to submitting applications and getting those through to local authorities. So really using the technology to innovate, to connect all the players that engage in planning and building, and look to continue to transform each of those services. Just a little bit about stats and usage. That's leveled out more so over recent years, but these are monthly statistics that we still continue to monitor. and we get over 3 million page views to the site, looking at the content and the guidance, and that doesn't include any access to making plan and applications. Unique users who come back on a regular basis, we've got over 500,000 of those, and we now facilitate around 90% of plan and application submission through to the local authorities in England and Wales. We added building control as well back in 2016. And for the architectural practices, we do see that they tend to take a holistic view at gaining planning permission right the way through to getting it built out. So we now get over 3,000 applications submitted for building control each month as well. In thinking about the vision of the planning portal and our service delivery, it's implementing a national standard approach, and we've taken that really right from the inception of the planning portal. The challenge of that remains delivering across all of the key stakeholders within that process, and I've listed just some of those there. We average over 500,000 applications being submitted each year, so that's by a myriad of different applicants. We tend to find that in terms, it's about 80-odd%, the high 80% are submitted by a planning professional, be it an agent, sole practitioner, or a big consultancy. We've now got 362 English authorities and 25 Welsh. Plus we've got a myriad of consultees, and we keep our service up to date with government policy and legislation. And just a practical delivery of that, we need to take into account a wide range of potential barriers. We work with different stakeholders that have got different skill sets, different knowledge of using technology, access to information. But what we've always tried to do is have a kind of golden thread to help people cross that bridge in achieving a common goal in understanding planning and getting planning and building control applications submitted as smoothly and successfully as possible. In thinking of our future plan, we've recently refreshed the business plan for a further 3-year program of investment and development, and that can be broken down into the 3 themes that you can see on our screen. The first one is reducing invalidation, and ever since the planning portal was put in place, we've taken a look at evaluating our services on a regular basis, listening to all key stakeholders that engage with them, so that we can then look to improve our service delivery. In looking at reducing invalidation, we see a key part of that moving forward as joining up the development management processes with planning policy, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Using technology to simplify and join up process. And the third one is all about making data accessible, sharing data, and potentially using APIs to join up our service with the myriad of other services used for planning and building. Common reasons for invalidation. So from the research that we've undertaken, it's shown that about 50% of planning applications are still invalid on receipt. In early 2019, we did some surveys, a 360 invalidation surveys out to planning professionals and local authorities to understand what the key reasons are and whether we could address any of those using technology or changing behaviors and values. Some of the top things that come out of the invalidation of applications were centered around site and block plans, some of the national requirements that still get submitted with planning applications. But there is a bit of a disconnect in understanding what are the local validation checklists and ensuring that you submit all supporting documents with them. On talking to the agents, they confirmed to us that they're looking for clarity around those local requirements as well. Consistency across local authorities in terms of how we process and determine applications, but they're also keen on speed as well, and I appreciate those bottom 2 points do tend to come down to resources at local authorities and the way in which we do our planning and process planning applications. We're currently re-evaluating the key reasons for invalidation, so we're talking to a number of authorities about what those reasons are, and again, by evaluating that, we can then look at our service delivery to see if we can address any of those. One of the key service implementations we have implemented to tackle invalidation was implementing the payment service back in September 18. Previously, we used to have a national online plan and application service, but the payments options were developed by the local authorities, and so we used to link off to them. And as you can imagine, there was a myriad of different offline options that local authorities could support, but there was no consistency. Some used to support payment online, some didn't. Some used to support checks, and more were turning those checks off. So we looked at that and could see that around 60% of applications prior to that were paid for using offline payment types. We knew it was a barrier for registration for local authorities because they want to get application and payment at the same time. But equally, on the flip side of that, talking to agents, they used to contact their clients. They didn't want to pay on the client's behalf, and therefore it's quite fragmented in that they used to chase payments, get it off the client, get the client to pay, then they used to chase the local authority. What we've done is to innovate that by getting the technology to do all of that chasing for us. So once you go on to submit your application, it asks how you want to pay. You've got a nominate facility there where you can nominate your client to pay, and then that sends off a notification that it's all done digitally. And we've seen a major shift over to people paying online, which is now up in the high 90%. It's also helped our business to become financially sustainable. There is a service charge on that, but on talking to agents, many of them have reported back great savings in process efficiency from no longer having to engage their clients to get the payment, forward that onto the local authority. So it's been a real success. If you're interested in reading a report that we wrote, I've got a reference to it there. In terms of joining up the process of development management in local plans, we're also thinking about, because there are a link to local plans and national and local designations, about thinking how can we better link to that information that's provided by local authorities. So effectively joining up those spatial layers and taking a spatial approach to front loading the application service. So you can put in a postcode or reference a parcel of land. We're thinking about the concept of, if we were able to pick up those constraints, then we could easily influence, when it comes to making an application, what are the supporting documents that need to be submitted with it. So just thinking as an example of that, if you're in a flood risk area, we know Hammersmith and Fulham require flood risk assessment on 80% of their applications. We can then use that to notify the applicant at the point of submission that these are the types of documents that we would like submitted. Looking to improve quality of application submission, and again, reduce invalidation due to missing local level requirements. Also looking at the second stage of technology, our vision remains to look at all core services from pre-application advice right the way through to building completion notice. And again, looking at the data that links all of those key stages with a unique identifier, almost having a golden thread to run through those processes. In thinking about how we pass data through to local authorities as well, in late May, we updated our common data standard for the submission of applications. We added prior approvals to those to the suite of online applications last December. And we've upgraded the connector so that we can now transfer all that data directly into the back office systems of local authorities. That is a national data standard for the submission of applications. And we're now working with all the ICT suppliers and partners to get that upgraded so that local authorities can realise the efficiencies of seeing that come in and populate the back office systems. Again, that is using an API to transfer data. And we do see lots of benefits in getting that information through. One thing I would say to local authorities is just to check your One App connectors, just to ensure that they are operating efficiently, as we do send through all the data that's captured on a plan and application form. but equally all of the information that relates to plan and application requirements as well. Looking forward, we are thinking about the concept of APIs, different parts of the service, not just the way in which we transfer applications, and thinking more broadly about the interoperability of the variety of systems that both planning professionals use and local authorities use, so that we could begin to join up the process and make it a lot more seamless. On listening to some of the things that our agents have asked for, they would like additional account functionality to better manage their organization administration. If you think of some of the large planning consultancies where they may have 60 different people all submitting planning applications, to have an account profile where they can manage their staff, their staffing permissions, but equally the ability to have collaboration tools. All the information that goes into creating an application, managing that as a project, inviting different people in to provide supporting documents such as detailed plans and attachments, but equally environmental impact assessments. So, we are giving thoughts to how we can improve that account access, and again, reporting tools so that the local authorities can, the planning consultancies can get information back on the status of their applications, reporting tools on what was the decision for each applications. They want to see all that sat within their planning portal account. So we are thinking about bi-directional integrations as well, and how we could potentially facilitate that with key partners in the planning market. In thinking about the 3-year program of investment and development as well, in making data accessible, we do process around 90% of planning applications to all the local authorities, and in May we launched a planning market insight report. It gives a lot more detail on the proposals being applied for across the country. So if you've not seen that, by all means log on to our director's blog and you can have a look at that. That is never been more important as we face the unprecedented times of COVID-19, and we saw a drop in applications in April of around 18.5%, but we are seeing the shoots of recovery in May where they're down about 14%, and June is already looking very good. In looking at the APIs, as Peter will vouch, we've been working closely with other partners such as the Greater London Authority in transferring data into the London Development Database. So we've got that moving forward, but equally we're working closely with them on their planning data project to get that set up across the London boroughs to capture more information on applications and pass that through into a national data set. We're also thinking about getting that status of applications passed back through, and equally we can then update the applicants within their accounts of it being registered, and equally the decision. So we'll be working with the GLA on that, but I think that sets a concept of what we're thinking about with other systems as well. Thinking about our content on the site as well, by having access to all that insight information, it gives us the opportunity to look at the common projects that people are applying for via the planning portal and update the content that sits around that so that we can put in place a simpler and more understandable user journey on each of those common types of submission. Outside of that, we are also thinking about the concepts of big data, data visualizations that we know planning consultancies and architectural practices want sent through to local authorities. So we're trying to think about how we can facilitate that by bringing local authorities along with us. And then there's also AI machine learning to be able to interrogate data and look at quality so that we can improve the quality of submissions too. The challenges that come with that, as I mentioned in the first slide, really, it's about bridging the technology and skills gap that exists between all of the key stakeholders within planning and building control. Not to name them all, we've got professionals, local authorities, and communities that all want to engage in that process. We will continue to take a partnership approach in working across planning, building and construction to achieve a common goal in bridging that gap. And we think that's important. We think it's important not to take planning in isolation and look across each of those services as we can pre-populate information and using the technology to carry data across making it simpler and easier for everybody that gets involved in that process. Moving forward, we still want to look at open data standards. We're aware of MHCLG looking into an open data standard for local plans. That would be great if that would come out. We could add, we can apply a bit of standardization to that and consistency, and then look to join up local plans and development management. And equally, you know, as I've mentioned, looking into visualizations and models and that new tech, and thinking about how we can get some of that going through to local authorities too, which will help with the consultation process and getting citizens and communities to understand development proposals and schemes, so that it becomes a bit more transparent. I would just like to add that if you're calling from a planning consultancy and you've got any continuous professional development workshops, we're more than happy at the planning portal to attend those, whether that be dialing in via Zoom or Teams to contribute on what we're doing. And equally for local authorities, to ensure that you're receiving maximum efficiency and that your connectors are working effectively, do get in touch. We do want to support you through this process, and it's never been more important than now with COVID locking down offices and people getting access into information. If we can do that digitally, then it's going to make it a lot more efficient for everybody. So if you're interested in any of the concepts that I've spoken about today, please do get in touch, because we'd like to catch up with you on that.
Thank you for that, Scott. It was really good. And I apologise, I let you run over because I knew there was some really good content to get to and messages at the end. Just looking kind of at some of the questions that have come through, I'm going to try and group them together, otherwise we're not going to have time to cover them all. But the first one was what the planning portal were thinking about at the moment in terms of receiving 3D models. Because a number of authorities are now having to receive them outside of the portal process, and they didn't know whether there was an intention to build that into your next key changes.
Yeah, it's certainly something that we've been given a lot of thought to. Again, we work closely with the larger planning consultancies and architectural practices, and they've got very good visualizations. There are some that are doing immersive planning as well. I suppose what it comes down to is getting a standard format for that type of information to be able to facilitate its submission through to local authorities. So considering that, you know, there's 362 authorities out there, if we can get some commonality in terms of what that data format looks like, then we can start to test that with local authorities and begin to push those models through. Because I think it's vitally important when it comes to consultation that rather than looking at flat plans, we could provide visualizations that help you know, neighbours and community groups to understand what it's going to look like and the impact that it might have on a particular area to then make informed representation. So yeah, very keen to be looking at that and how do we progress that to support the 2D PDF plans that we send through.
The second area kind of was some interest around the work that you guys have done with building control. And the direct question was, how many local authority building control departments have signed up? And are there more in the pipeline?
Yeah, sure, that's a good question. LABC are one of our strategic partners. So we've got just over 70% of local authorities set up for building control. It's free of charge to set up. So if you're one of those remaining 30% and you do want to get connected, do get in touch and we can get you set up pretty quickly. We've got a standard application forms across the 3 common types that are submitted. And yeah, building control is something that we think fits intrinsically into planning. You tend to get your planning and then you get your building control. So yeah, it's about 70%, and we're facilitating just over 3,000 applications submitted each month. Moving forward, when we look at the development on the planning portal, we'd like a single sign-on that gives you access to both services as well, because then it makes a lot easier user journey for regular applicants that we see and regular users of the portal.
Which kind of brings us on to the next logical step, which is what are the key things you're going to be changing for agent submitters, and how is that going to change their experience of using the portal?
Yeah, I suppose they want that kind of one-stop shop. I think that's never gone away. So they come on and they create their applications. They've got functionality that they sit there and draft. When they submit them and then they're transferred to local authority, they get all of those notifications. And equally, that links in with our payment service as well in keeping them informed. But they do often raise the point of, if we look at some of the larger planning consultancies, they might have 60 different people all submitting planning applications, and they've all got individual accounts. So they want to see better account management on the portal, maybe having a super user, an administrator to set up the profiles of their regional offices, the staff in those regional offices, and the different permissions. But equally, they'd like to see improved collaboration tools as a part of that process. So even at a sole practitioner level, we find that they may do the planning elements of it, but they may work with an architect who will pull together all of the plans and drawings associated with that application. By allowing them to access a collaborative account of the agent, then they can do a lot of that collaboration, get the application ready before they submit it off. And then right at the end of that process, we often get applicants asking for a bi-directional feed so that they can get the status of their application coming back into their portal account to reduce contact to the local authorities, and equally somewhere they can store the decision given as well.
Another question that's come in, which is kind of from a completely different direction, which is around this market insight reporting. And it's really good that you've published it out there, and I think that's going to make an interesting read. But what were the key messages that came out of it?
Yeah, I suppose it's never been more pertinent than the times of COVID and the impact of COVID and the confidence in the marketplace. But I think it's useful to look at all the market insight information of applied for data so that we can note trends, do analysis, look at the common types of application, and then re-look at our service provision on how we can improve that. But certainly for all the players in the market, it could help with thought leadership, it can help with business planning. So I think it's quite an important tool as we think about moving forward and trying to recover from this global pandemic and what that may mean for planning, building, and construction in general.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think we'll all go and have a good read of that. There was one other kind of thought that came through from the questions, which was around what the key changes. What are the key changes that users are going to experience next from the planning portal? Is there anything kind of really fundamental that's about to hit everyone that they don't know yet?
Yeah, I don't think we've got any. Yeah, I don't think we've got a silver bullet for planning or building control services for 1 minute. I've been in planning for over 20 years, and simplifying it is not as easy as it sounds. But I suppose we're looking at a roadmap, but what we'd value more than anything is to get the feedback from our regular users to help inform what they would like to see on the planning portal, to influence what they would like to see first. So I've talked about quite a few concepts of things that we're looking at. Ideally, I'd appreciate them getting in touch to add value to the insight and research that we're carrying out, and also help us to prioritize what they would like to see improved on the site or of the services that we provide.
And then there's one final question, which is the one that we've been asking all of our speakers. And I've just discovered you've been in the planning industry for just a tiny bit longer than me, albeit in a very close geographical place. The question is what advice you'd give anyone coming into planning now? Because we appreciate we've got a few challenging years ahead of us. Actually, you've been through 3 recessions, right? I've only been through 2. What advice would you give anyone coming into our industry at the moment?
Yeah, no, you're right, Peter. I think planning is a great industry to be in. I've been in it over 20 years. I used to work at the planning inspectorate before moving over to the planning portal. I think it's really interesting trying to shape places, shape communities, and it's, you know, there's a lot of potential for using technology too. So, you know, if you're really interested in shaping the places in which we live and we work, planning's definitely for you. And if you've got an element of a technical mind as well, then there's a broad variety of different skills and things that you can learn within planning at this point in time. Coming out of the back of COVID, we will recover. There will be opportunities moving forward, and I'd say get on board and try to be a part of that.
Yeah, fantastic, thank you. So thank you ever so much for coming and speaking today. It's really appreciated. And it just rests with me to say thank you so much to Lucy and Natalie for making the whole thing work. I don't think I'd know where to start. So thank you both for this.
Thank you, Peter.
And there we go. So until next time, thank you.